Okay, let's continue with part 2 of Unit 6 in your Smart Choice 3 books. And I want to go ahead and skip the listening page and just go right to the reading page. So let's continue with After the Crash. Okay, let's read it together, and then we'll answer some questions on the reading. Okay, so before you read, look at the picture and the title of the story. Okay, what do you think it's about? So we see it's titled After the Crash, and then we see the picture of the people looking hurt and cut up on a beach. Okay, so maybe it's about a plane crash, and they survived the plane crash. Okay, so let's go ahead and read and see. Chapter 1. Helen woke up on a beach. For a moment, she had no idea where she was, but she knew that she had never been there before. Very carefully, she stood up. On her left, waves crashed violently onto the sand. On her right, there was a dense rainforest. Eventually, she found Dawson. He was lying on his back about 50 meters away. She tapped him gently until he came to. I think I've broken my arm, he whispered softly. Where are the others? I don't know, she replied. They must be in the forest. Come on, we have to find them. Suddenly, there was a deafening roar from inside the forest. I'm not going into the forest, he said. It's dangerous. There are wild animals in there. Listen, she said firmly. There were 11 people in that helicopter. The others might still be alive. I'm going into the forest. You can come with me or not. She glanced briefly into the forest. The trees were close together, and she couldn't see anything clearly. She had never been so scared in her life. Chapter 2. Helen walked into the forest. It felt cold and dark. Suddenly, there was a movement in the trees behind her. It was Dawson, stumbling towards her. Wait for me, he said breathlessly. You can't go in there alone. They continued walking. After a few minutes, they saw some smoke. Oh no, said Helen. It looks like fire. Then she heard another voice calling her name. It was Richard. Helen, over here. She ran towards him and hugged him. You are alive, she said. What about the others? Follow me, he replied. Okay, so they had a helicopter crash, right? And they were on the beach, and they were trying to find the other people from the helicopter inside the rainforest, okay? But the rainforest was very dense, right? It was very thick. A lot of the trees were together. Okay, and they heard a roar of an animal. So the rainforest was scary, right, to go into. Okay, so let's do part 2. Tell me if the sentences are true or false. Okay, so number 1, Helen remembers everything after the crash. That's false, right? She doesn't really know. She had no idea where she was. She didn't know where the other people were. Okay, so she doesn't remember, right, everything. Helen and Dawson were alone when the accident happened. Okay, false, right? They were with the other people in the helicopter when there was a crash. Okay, they were both hurt in the accident. Okay, that's true. And they are both nervous about going into the forest. Okay, yes, true. But it seems like Dawson really doesn't want to go into the rainforest. Okay, and then for part 3, what do you think happens next? Use these questions to make predictions. So will Dawson go into the forest with Helen? Will there be any survivors? Will there be any wild animals? Okay. So what do you think? What are your predictions about what's going to happen next in this story? Okay. Yes, so we saw for during part 2, we saw that yes, Dawson does go with Helen, right? And there are survivors, right? Because she hears Richard. And will there be any wild animals? Okay. We're not sure. Okay, but we hear a roar. We hear a roar. She hears a roar in the forest. Okay, but during chapter 2, where we don't see any wild animals, but we just hear the roar in part 1. Okay, and let's just do one last page. We'll do the speaking page together. Okay, we'll take a look at the speaking page. My travel nightmare. Okay, so let's do part 1 first. We'll do part 1, and then we'll do part 2 and 3. Okay, so part 1, match the travel disaster to the picture. Okay, and which situation is worst? Okay, so number 1 is C, right? Suddenly I realized I was seasick and I had to leave the table. Okay, 2 is B. Unfortunately, I had forgotten my swimsuit, so I couldn't go in the water. Okay, and 3 is A. We couldn't find the hotel because I had carelessly lost the address. Okay, so what do you think? Which situation is worst? I think for me, probably the first one, because I've been seasick before, and it's a very terrible feeling, right? Throwing up and being dizzy. Okay, so what do you think? Which one is worst for you? All right, and then for part 2, use the information in the charts and your own ideas to make true or false stories about you, about yourself. Okay. So for the first one, you can say, oh, when I got to the beach, I realized that I had forgotten to bring my swimsuit. Okay, so I just went swimming in my shorts and my t-shirt, and I had fun anyway. Okay. How about the second one? I was walking in Rio de Janeiro when I discovered that I had gotten lost. Okay. So, okay, someone came from behind me and stole some money from my pockets. Okay, someone pickpocketed my pockets. Okay, right, these stories can be true or false, right? We're just practicing making a story, okay? I had started feeling hungry, so I decided to leave early. So I went to the first restaurant I could find, and I had a big meal of Chinese food. Okay, so can you guys make a little story with those 3 sentences? Okay, so take a few minutes to do that. Pause the video. And then for the last part, for part 3, just tell your travel story. Okay, then your partner can guess if it's true or false. Okay, so the book says, I was walking in Mexico City when I discovered I had gotten lost. I asked a police officer for help, and he let me use his phone. I think that's true. No, it's actually a false story. It happened to me in Los Angeles. Okay, so can you guys make a travel story about something that happened to you? Okay, and if you can, please tell a partner. All right, make a story, make your travel story. Okay, and then after you finish making a travel story, we'll go ahead and check, we'll check your answers for the homework. Okay, so we'll start with Unit 6, okay, page 30. We'll check your vocabulary first. Okay, so we'll start with part 1, number 2. So Laura checked her bags in, but unfortunately, the airline lost them. Okay, 3, we were having a great time until our car suddenly stopped. My camera ran out of power, but luckily I had an extra battery. Okay, let's do part 2, number 2. Okay, so Number 2, the couple behind me shared their snacks cheerfully. The woman next to me was talking to her son noisily. Only one man was angry enough to yell at another passenger. The pilot waited for the storm to end. He didn't want to land the plane carelessly. Once we landed, the flight attendants helped us leave the plane quickly. We were happy to be on the ground at last. Okay. Surprisingly, we still had time in Atlanta to enjoy some sightseeing. Okay, let's go to page 31, language practice. Okay, part 1, number 2. The party had already started by the time we arrived. 3. I had never studied Korean until I moved to Seoul. When she finally got to the airport, her cousin's plane had already landed. Jill had never been on a plane until she traveled abroad. Okay, part 2. Okay, so let's write the words in the correct order to make sentences. Okay, so when I finally got the tickets to the theater, okay, we could say the tickets were already gone. Okay, so when I finally got the tickets to the theater, okay, we could say, oh, they were already gone. Okay. All right. Okay, so until they went to Argentina, they had never visited another country. Okay, until they went to Argentina, they had never visited another country. All right. So let's do number 4. So she had been to that hotel before, so she didn't need the address. She had been to that hotel before, so she didn't need the address. All right, we'll do number 5. We hadn't been to that cafe until our friends took us there. We hadn't been to that cafe until our friends took us there. Okay, part 3. So we'll start with, okay, Emily had wanted to go to Thailand since she was a teenager. So after she had saved enough money, she bought a plane ticket to Bangkok. After she had stayed in Bangkok for 3 days, she went to Chiang Mai. She visited an elephant camp and saw some amazing temples. By the time she had arrived in Phuket, she saw many sights. She was so exhausted that she sat on the beach and thought about what she had done. Before she came to Thailand, she had never realized how truly beautiful the country really was. All right, last page. Okay, we'll start with part 4 on the last page here. Okay, part 4 on page 32. Okay, so just use your own ideas. Okay, by the time I got to the station, okay, the train had already left. When I arrived at school, the students had already started class. Until I visited a different country, I had never been abroad. Before I began studying English, I had never studied another language. I didn't know what to do after the teacher had told the students what to do. I didn't know what to do after the teacher had told the students what to do. Okay, so just make the sentences as you want, but make sure you use the past perfect. All right, and for part 5, let's correct the sentences. They had never been on a boat before they went to Hawaii. How long had the plane stayed in the air before it finally landed? Okay, before it finally landed. You don't need the had. By the time I was 25, I had gone abroad 10 times. When Max finally arrived in Dallas, his connecting flight had left. Okay, part 6, last part. Okay, how was your vacation? Terrible. Someone stole my things when I was at the beach. Everything? Yes. After I had been at the beach all day, I went back to the hotel. That's when I found my empty suitcase. Oh, that's terrible. Had you told anyone you were going to the beach before you left? Yes, I had told everyone at breakfast. I guess that wasn't very smart. That's too bad. Did you tell the police? Yes, I did. But by the time they had arrived, I changed my plane ticket to fly home on the next flight. I had to leave early because I was out of money. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I made a mistake for 7 and 8. My apologies. Okay, so by the time they arrived, I had changed my flight. I had changed my ticket to fly home on the next flight. Okay, so by the time they arrived, I had changed my plane ticket. Okay, so we'll stop there for now, and you guys can look for Unit 7 next week, and we'll do an attendance check next week. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.